I love to read a book and be absorbed in words to escape the light.
Hi guys, so I actually thought I would try and do a bit of a book discussion video for you as opposed to the gazillion tags I seem to be coming out with lately. This is a video I've been thinking about doing for a while now, and it's in conjunction to some books that I've ranted about in the past, and also particular tropes within fiction, particularly within young adult paranormal romance fiction, especially things that I've complained about before, and I kind of wanted to give a bit of a long overdue backstory as to why certain things make me so angry, and also to provide some context to it, and also to reveal a little bit of something about myself that you may not know about me as a reader and my past experiences with certain relationship tropes. So it's a book discussion ranty thing. We all know that within fiction, I'm sure there has always been a tendency for authors to write about some troubling romantic relationship dynamics. There often seems to be some worrying parallels between abusive relationships and passionate relationships. People tend to confuse the two at times and use one as an excuse for the other. So often a relationship in which the dynamics are a little bit off kilter and the goings on may not be all that healthy, sometimes is the excuse that is provided is that it's just really passionate and intense, and that makes it okay, that excuses it, and that negates any of the bad qualities of it. We've seen this a lot. I think that it's something that's come to the forefront a little bit more in some respects since the Twilight phenomenon. For all the hype that Twilight had, it was always going to get some people that disliked it and criticised it, and with the criticism came commentary on Edward's treatment of Bella, and Bella's passiveness and submissiveness towards Edward, the inequality of their relationship, and the really troubling stalker overtones that came with it. That was a concern given the popularity of the novel and those characters, especially among young readers. As you know, I've criticised this till I've been blue in the face in the past, and I wanted to kind of illuminate something about my backstory as a reader. In the year of 2004, a film was released, an adaptation actually, of a very well-known musical called The Phantom of the Opera. It was Joel Schumacher's film, with Emmy Rossum and Jared Butler and Patrick Wilson, and it was not a very well-made film. For whatever reason, at that time in my life, when I saw that film adaptation, I became a huge fan. I made scrapbooks, see? I made a shit ton of stuff. And I immersed myself in the Phantom fans, P-H-A-N-S, that community, which was rearing back up and coming out of the shadows, if you will, because of this film adaptation. I became a really big Eric and Christine shipper, Eric being the Phantom, so I ship Christine with the Phantom. Now, this is pretty much actually really the traditional kind of OTP of the Phantom community. Essentially, for the most part, a lot of people tend to be Eric and Christine shippers, and it kind of goes without saying if you're a fan of the musical in particular. It is not so common, or so assumed, I suppose, if you're a fan more so of like Leroux's novel, because it's not intended in Leroux's novel, whereas the musical tends to push upon the notion of these two as a romantic pairing and really hammers it home and sentimentalizes it, and, you know, and paints it in a different light than how Leroux intended it to be. But the core of things remain the same. The Phantom is still a mass murderer. He's a serial killer. He's not mentally stable. He's possessive. He's really violent. He's demanding. He's manipulative. He's an out-and-out right liar. And he toys with people's emotions. He toys with people physically. Yes, he's a very tortured soul who's had a terrible life, and people have treated him very poorly, but he in turn has not been very good, and he is a criminal. He should probably be locked away. He needs medical and psychiatric attention. However much we romanticize this figure, these are the facts. I, however, was a huge Eric and Christine shipper, and as a result read a great deal of fanfiction, far more than I will ever want to admit to, and essentially they're almost all Stockholm Syndrome kidnapping stories, where Christine is kidnapped and taken to a really lovely house. Usually it's like a mansion, of course it is, to live with Eric and eventually comes to love him despite the fact that he stole her. And I wasted a good 2 years almost being immersed in the Phantom community and being a huge supporter of Eric and Christine, no matter how many people, including friends and family, were telling me that, Renee, you do realise that you're idealising a pairing that is fundamentally wrong because there are moral issues here. People would remind me that I would never have supported such a relationship in real life. And it's true. I was very hypocritical as a reader back then. I was completely supporting something in fiction that I would never condone in real life. I spent at least a good year in denial. This was not a great period of my life. When I look back on this, I'm more than a little bit ashamed and slightly concerned. A bit troubling. I honestly can't explain to you the psychology behind why I was such an avid fan of this particular pairing, and still to this day, if you'd ask me, you know, Renee, which Phantom pairing do you ship, I'd still say Eric and Christine. I'm just much more sensible about it now, I hope. And the reason I told you all of this, as humiliated as I am to admit it, I thought that it would just provide a little bit of a hint as to what 18-year-old Renee thought was romantic. And that is the sort of thing that I'm seeing lots of other 18-year-old readers these days think is romantic in novels and series such as Twilight, such as Hush Hush, such as Fallen, such as any of the paranormal romances in particular. The thing that really got me thinking about all this was the fact that I was sent a copy of Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire, and this was sent to me for review a few weeks ago, and I didn't request it. I immediately hopped on Facebook and talked to some of my booktubing friends and said I really want to rip the pages out of this piece of shit, because I was looking through it and getting really angry over what I was seeing. If you look here, I've ripped pages out of this book, and I don't feel guilty about it because I didn't request it. And it's going to go in the recycle. I'm recycling all the paper. Makes you wish books could come true. You feel like you're a part of it all. Up there with Twilight, forget Edward and Jacob. Travis is out of this world. A great antidote to my shades of grey withdrawal symptoms. Dear God, no! I flipped through it a little bit. I read all the pages that people had listed on Goodreads as having really ridiculously awful quotes. I looked through it and I just thought, there's no way in hell I'm reading this. It is the same frickin' story as every other thing. It's the same. It's devoid of paranormal aspects. That it's the same sort of relationship dynamic that you can read in any other book that's going around. There's a bit of a page, like Travis, because he's a bad boy, he's got tattoos all over him, and he gets a tattoo at some point that's called Pigeon, because that's his nickname for her, and then later on he gets one that says Abby. She gets a tattoo right towards the end of the book that says Mrs. Maddox. Not even his frickin' name. Her position is simply Travis's wife. Like a cow getting, like, I don't know, for sale stamped on their rear end or something. It was just disgusting. I think often it also links into very fine line that a lot of authors tend to draw between physical violence and sexual pleasure, sexual attention. The line between violence and sex tends to blur a lot with some of these stories. When a romantic male character comes across as being really dominant and aggressive, it can be intended to symbolize their passion and their romantic intensity and their intense devotion towards their partner and such. I regret the time I spent thinking it was okay, in fiction at least, thinking that it was, you know, something that I didn't really have to question. And I'm not saying that there isn't some entertainment value in these sort of things. I'm not saying that they're not necessarily worthy of page time, and I know that obviously they're always probably going to hold appeal, dramatic appeal for readers. There's a reason that people keep perpetuating this trope. I think the problem is that so often these relationship dynamics are portrayed as being a positive thing, and they're not questioned. So they're held up to be an ideal, and they're made to seem like everything is fine, and this is the kind of relationship you should desire with somebody, and oh, wouldn't it be fantastic if things were like that? That if, you know, the opposite approach was taken and it was shown to be the unhealthy mess that it is, that I wouldn't have nearly as much of a problem. When unhealthy relationships are portrayed as being unhealthy, I'm totally fine with it. Knowing how I was for a short while back then makes me wonder about young, impressionable readers now, what they choose to engage in with other people, and the way in which they view the world and such. Still, it's an important thing to go through, I think, reading stuff that you'll eventually come to dislike later, or you'll view it differently when you're older. Everyone should have that kind of journey probably in their reading experience, but it's simply that it's so popular and so oversaturated in young adult fiction, especially at the moment. I get a bit concerned, and I wanted to sort of explain why that is to an extent. I've recently been even more pissed off because I'm trying, not very successfully, to get through Deborah Harkness's A Discovery of Witches. You can see I've been labelling all the paid moments that have been bothering me, and there's so many. I'm only that far through the damn thing. This is essentially an adult Twilight relationship dynamic. The only difference really is that we start off with Diana, who's our protagonist, our female character, having a tad more backbone and a bit more of an independent will and intelligence and a desire to kind of be independent and live on her own and support herself. She starts out that way, and so in a way, my question is does it piss you off even more if you've got a seemingly strong-minded, independent female who then allows herself to become submissive to this domineering male figure, or is it easier to cope with if that female figure starts out as really passive anyway? What is the lesser of the two evils, really? I'm really struggling to get through this damn book, mainly because I just hate Matthew so much. My god, I hate him, and Diana's pissing me off. She's just turned into a ditz. I hope I've made sense. I hope you don't think less of me, given that you now know my dark, dark past. Does anyone else have any similar experiences in terms of what they've read and what they no longer like reading about? Let me know what you think of the abusive, unhealthy romantic relationship trope that's going on. Share thoughts, and let's discuss and debate and whatnot. Okay, that's all for now. Goodbye, everybody.